Hey, how's it going? How's everybody doing? This is just going to be another funny or wrapped up story about my life. This video probably won't be very long. It's not really a long story, but it's still a bit of a funny story. Kind of at my grandmother's expense, sorry to say, but she passed away almost 30 years ago, 27 years ago, but, she's still a big part of my life. She's been out of my life, deceased longer than she was in my life, but it's still a funny story. And I'm not saying this to poke fun at my grandmother. It's just a funny story that just happens to, or my grandmother is the one that kind of looks a little bit goofy in this story. But anyway, what's that on my shoulder? But so anyway, if you want to subscribe, help me get up to 1,000 subs. You want to like, comment, do all that fun YouTube stuff. I do get back to comments as best as I can. I don't get a lot of them, so it's not really that difficult for me to do. So this goes back to when I was I would have been 7 years old. I remember because I remember where I was living at the time, and I was spending the weekend, I think, with my grandmother's house, who only lived at that time just a few blocks away from where I was living. Um, so anyway, my parents were away somewhere, I guess, and I guess this would have been Sunday. Uh, crumb in my mouth. So this would have been Sunday, and there's a park near my grandmother's house. Now you got to understand, I'm Gen X, so going to the park alone in the middle of the day with no, even if you met up with your friends or you didn't, it was just you were out of the house. So it was a common thing. So I was at the park walking around, and then as I'm walking around, I find this little magazine, little digest size magazine, Reader's Digest size magazine, and it was itchy. Damn. I did not prepare for this video. I should have blew my nose, scratched all my itches, and then started. But I forgot. Or I just didn't think of it. So anyway, I find this magazine. And this magazine was of an adult nature. Hello, Lemmy. Want to say hi? Real quick, since you're right here. Oh, look at that face. Yes, I'm disrupting my story so you can show your pretty face. Very up close. Look, look. Let everyone see your face. Okay. Put me down. I got cranky paws today and every day. Yeah, you. But anyway, back to the story. So I find this magazine, and I'm too young to really understand sex or porn or whatever. I just know it's got naked people in it, and I know I'm not supposed to be looking at it because I'm a kid. So what do? I keep the magazine. So I hurry home to my grandmother's house, and I go upstairs. Like at that time, my aunt had long moved out, and actually, strangely, she did move in with us for a little while because my grandmother, who was divorced at the time, had been divorced for quite some time at that point. Wasn't the easiest person to live with, but so she lived with us, and then she ended up moving with my grandfather into his house. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. Just a little insight. So at this time, I was sleeping in what used to be my aunt's room. So I go upstairs and I'm flipping through this magazine. Now it's one of the ones that it's stories and then a picture and then some stories. So I was too young to understand the stories. I was too young to really understand what the magazines were for. If you get my meaning, I was a kid. I just knew I wasn't supposed to be looking at pictures of naked people doing what these naked people were doing. But anyway, so I'm flipping through this magazine, kind of giggling and look, they're naked. He's putting it where? So anyway, my grandmother calls me. So now I'm sort of in panic mode, somewhat like, what do I do with it? What do I do with it? Now I go to what is naturally ingrained in human being is lift up the mattress and throw the magazine underneath. So hold on, Nick. You want to play? Okay, here. Where's your toy? Where'd you put it? I don't know where. Oh, there it is. Okay. Ready? Go get it. There we go. We'll play later. So, anyway, I go to huck it underneath the mattress, and so when I lift up the mattress, what's under there? 3 more magazines. So I'm looking at them for a second, and I remember I threw the magazine down, the one I had on the bed, and I pulled it out real quick. And then opened up, and still got crap in my mouth. It's Chinese food from the mall I ate. But Anyway, pull the magazine out real quick, look at it, and there's naked people in these magazines too. So I just put it back, and I don't really think much of it. But I accidentally left the magazine I found on the bed. So I go downstairs and doing whatever my grandmother was having me do. And then around that time, my parents come home, and they came home. They're with my aunt, my other aunt. There's three of them. There's the older aunt who was with my mom, my aunt Patty, and then my mom, and then the younger aunt who wasn't there, whose room I was using. That would be Joette. That was my youngest aunt. And so anyway, they come home and we have dinner or whatever, and we're just sitting in the family room, living room, whatever you want to call it, watching TV or whatever, and just chatting. Now my mom goes upstairs to use the washroom, and I guess as she walked by, she took a peek into my aunt's room, or the room I was staying in, and noticed a magazine on the bed. So she went over and picked it up, and then she comes downstairs with it and asks me, "Where did you get this?" And I said I found it, whatever. I had no reason to not lie about it. I wasn't doing anything. I knew I wasn't supposed to be looking at it, but now I'm gonna blow my nose, or I'm gonna sneeze. Stupid video. Well, not stupid video, stupid events during the video. Oh, why can't all this happen before the video? Glad it's just a basic video. I didn't set anything up besides putting Leatherface up here in the kitchen peeking out of the cupboard. But anyway, so where'd you get this magazine? And now I'm getting a lecture. Oh, and I'm kind of wearing a sort of appropriate shirt for this too. But anyway, so where'd you get the magazine? I found it, whatever. And I'm getting the whole lecture now. I know my aunt and my dad are laughing. Like, they're not visibly laughing, but I know my mom's laughing too. Like, the three of them are probably in their minds are just like, he's so embarrassed right now. This is hilarious. It's kind of like how when kids mouth off to do something they're not supposed to do, and the parents give them the finger behind their back. It happens. I don't have kids myself, but I know it happens because I know a lot of parents. But so anyway, she's giving this lecture. I shouldn't be looking at it. It's inappropriate, blah, blah, blah. So I blurt out, "Grandma has some too." And I was like, "Where?" My grandmother, she's super embarrassed just by that statement alone. Now, you got to understand, too, my grandmother was a bit of a character. She wasn't a bad person at all, but she did like to have a few toasts during the day, throughout the day, every day. So she would do silly things without thinking. And also keep in mind, she had been divorced for quite some time and never had a follow-up relationship after that. So she was always single after that. And I'll mention why that's a little bit important in the story. Well, not important, but I'll get to that. So it's like, "Where?" And I said, "Upstairs in the bedroom." So my mom's like, "Show me." So instead of taking my mom up, I think my mom wanted me to come up with me. I just run upstairs, 7-year-old me, thump, 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 all the way up the stairs, come back downstairs. So now my mom's at the bottom of the stairs. So I go, "Look," and I hand them to my mom, thinking like, okay, now I'm off the hook. They're gonna make fun. They're gonna yell at my grandma for having things she shouldn't have. And also, in my mind, she's a grandma. She shouldn't have pictures of naked people in the house. I didn't know. I guess my grandmother would have only been in her 50s at the time. But yeah, I guess late 40s, early 50s, around there. She was still a young woman. But so she brings the living room, and now my mom, my aunt, my dad's kind of glancing, and then when he saw what the pictures were, I remember he chuckled and said, "I don't want to look at that." And he goes and sits somewhere else. So my mom and her sisters are sitting there looking at these magazines, and my grandmother is just like, "Those aren't mine. Those aren't mine. Those aren't mine." Or my mom and her sister. Sorry, there was only the one, her younger sister, Joette. She wasn't there. "Those aren't mine. Those are Joette's magazines." But when they looked at the date on the magazines, they were new magazines, meaning Joette didn't live there anymore at the time these magazines were bought. So she's so embarrassed. Now, here's the thing. They were pictures of naked men, right? So, like, you would think Playgirl or whatever the magazines are that women would be looking at to see naked men. Except that they weren't. It wasn't Playgirl. It was actually gay magazines of men with men. Now, I mean, I personally don't care about that. That's not offensive to me. But at the time, I didn't really know. I just saw it was naked people, and I was not supposed to be looking at it. So, and I was laughing. My aunt's laughing. There. Oh, look at the size of that! Look how big that one. And I'm just sitting there looking. And my grandma said, "Those aren't mine. Those are not mine. Those are your sisters. Those are not mine." And my mom's like, my mom's like, no, no, these are new. Joanne hasn't lived here when these magazines are even made. And she's still going on, nope, those are not mine. Those are not mine. She just kept going and going, rolling with it. It was so, so funny. I remember it, and I felt a little bit bad, but my grandmother, I think she's eventually would have seen the humor in it, at least the next day when her mind was a little less clouded. Um, and I'm not making fun of my grandmother for she had a drinking problem. It was sad, it was unfortunate, and it actually contributed to her young passing. But still, it was what it was, and things were what they were. But but anyway, and then they're looking, and I remember I saying, looks at my grandmother, and I didn't really know what the word meant at the time, but I remember specifically saying, these are gay magazines, right? And she said, they're not my magazine. She's just arguing about it, but they clearly were. And then I remember my grandmother left the room. She goes, yeah, it's been so long, she probably forgot what they look like. Making that comment. But yeah, it was good times. And those magazines, I don't know if, I think my mom or my aunt either took them with them just for whatever, or just left them there and whatever happened to them. But it was just a funny story that I happened to find this porno magazine on the ground. I go to hide it, and where I go to hide it, my grandmother hid her own porno magazines in the same spot. Now the funny thing is, it wasn't, she didn't hide them in her room unless she had more there, which is quite possible. She didn't hide them under her mattress. She didn't hide them in her room where no one would ever think to look, because you were not allowed to go in her room. That was even after she passed away, and I was in the room. We were just sort of going through things. It just still felt a little bit taboo being in there. It's like, I'm not supposed to be in here, But it was like the forbidden room. So I don't know why she didn't keep them there. And so she had them all the way upstairs on the top floor in a bedroom people like myself would be using. So I don't know why she chose that as a spot, and that's why I found them. But yeah, it was just a little bit of the irony or the coincidence, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, no, I again, like, I love my grandmother. I miss her dearly. And there is actually a video, if you want to scroll down. I think it's another funny wrapped up video. So if you go through this playlist, you'll find it. And the thing on the screen says she visited me in a dream. It's really interesting video, really interesting dream I had. But I'm not. If you want to know, just check out the video. Scroll down, you'll find it. But yeah, if you watch this all the way, and if you have any funny stories, similar stories, or just funny, borderline embarrassing stories that you're comfortable sharing, drop them in the comments. Just mention it, and you want to subscribe, help me get up to 1,000 subs. That would be outstanding too. I'd really, really like that. And just like the video, whatever. And I guess until the next one.